Haley.
Hey,
Hearing?
okay, I'm in. Thank you.
Okay. You're
Bye,
welcome.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
Jonathan.
Hi.
Hi, Malcolm. Hi, Lee.
Hello, Eileen.
Eileen, I'm gonna mute you, but it's nothing personal. All right. Can everyone hear me, first of all? Garfield, you're muted. Malcolm's there, Jonathan. I guess it's the four of us, yeah.
Hear you.
All right, sorry about that. We had to get a verification code from Amy, who's on vacation. Which is always,
Marvels of modern science.
it's always difficult to do, yeah. So hopefully she wasn't having too much fun before we ruined it. All righty, I'm gonna go through the usual reading of things. All right. So I call the meeting to order of the Select Board and Planning Board Housing Subcommittee. My name is Lee Davis. I'm Vice Chair of the Select Board of the Housing Subcommittee, just acting in this role just for the beginning of the meeting till we reorganize. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A-18, and the Governor's July 16th, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members of any meeting of the public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Housing Subcommittee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.townofgb.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to Mass General Law 7, Chapter 38, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission from the chair. The listings of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. So I see that we have Eileen Mooney here, and we have a Shay from the Berkshire Edge, and that's all. So we'll let them record if they so do wish. And I'm going to take roll call. Garfield.
Here.
Jonathan.
Here.
Malcolm.
I am here, but I am not sworn in. So it was a surprise to me that I needed to be sworn in, but I have not, so I can't vote today.
Okay. And I'm here, so thank you very much. We'll take that on board. Okay. First of all, before I open with the subcommittee's announcements, I wanted to thank Pedro Pachano for his work and efforts and wonderful, insightful information that he brought to the housing subcommittee meetings last year, and we will miss him. And we also welcome eventually Malcolm Fick, who will come on once he's voted, or not, I shouldn't say voted in, to be sworn in. So
I swear I'll do it.
thanks to Pedro, and welcome Malcolm, but we'll do the big welcome party next
And
meeting.
people all over town are swearing at Malcolm.
Yeah, they're all swearing in.
No, that's swearing at, not swearing.
So we'll go to subcommittees, announcements and statements. Jonathan.
Well, I would like to start by talking about the short-term rental bylaw that was passed, and I know it's being appealed and all of that, but What really jumped out at me was the fact that that bylaw goes out of its way to really reinforce the second-class status of citizens who do not have enough money to buy, but have enough money to rent. And it singled them out. So if I own a house, I can rent it short-term. But if I don't have enough money to own a house, but I live in a house full-time and I rent it, then I don't have that privilege. And that made no sense to me. It just seemed counterintuitive to everything that we're trying to do about affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Garfield?
I have nothing at the moment.
Okay, and nothing for me, and we'll skip over Malcolm. Okay, so we'll
You
move
can
right along.
volunteer. You can talk.
Okay, I'm learning on this meeting, so I'm absorbing.
We're a feisty bunch, Malcolm, so I don't know. We don't want to scare him off too quickly, Jonathan.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the subcommittee reorganization. As I mentioned, I'm just acting for the moment as vice chair to lead the discussion, but I will entertain any motions for. We'll begin with the chair for chairmanship of the subcommittee housing.
Well, I'll make a motion to nominate Lee for the chair for the subcommittee.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Garfield,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Aye.
and Lee. Aye.
I would vote aye if I could.
My cat, thank you. Okay, so that's wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone, for electing me as chair. We'll move on to vice chair. Do I have a motion to nominate a vice chair? Would anyone like to volunteer?
I'll nominate Malcolm for vice chair.
Geez, I have no say in it.
That's kind of mean. He can't even get off it to say no. I believe we'll probably have to wait till he's actually can participate in this. So,
But I'll be fine if you want to do that.
okay,
Well,
all right.
even though you have to wait, can we kind of know? Because I have no desire to do it, and doesn't.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess what we could say is unofficially, we can say that Malcolm has been. Would you like to just informally? We'll say that we all are in agreement that Malcolm would be a wonderful vice chair, but we can't really go forward until he is actually part of the committee. So we'll take that up. I'll put that in the minutes and the
The only
agenda.
correction to that, Lee, is I didn't hear anybody else say the word wonderful, so.
And so unofficially, informally, welcome Malcolm, but we'll go through the vote again on the next meeting just to make it official. So that's good. And just so you know, I am a terrible minute taker, and I had asked permission from the town if they could take the minutes for this meeting just to get us going. But anyone would like to raise their hand to take minutes for our next meetings in perpetuity? Oh, I see Jonathan raising his hand.
No, you don't.
His
certainly
pencil went
do
up
not.
there.
That wasn't okay. I can we do the same thing with Malcolm since he can't really talk. We can just
Right.
nominate him.
I could take minutes.
Oh, okay. So informally, once you're on the housing subcommittee, we'll make that official. But thank you very much.
He
So
can
that's
take minutes. He can take minutes for this meeting. He doesn't have to be
I can.
a member.
well, we have someone. So the staffs, we're gonna send the recording to the town
Oh,
staff.
okay.
I don't want to
Oh,
put
all right.
that. That's too much, too much on you.
Okay.
So that's great. So formally, I'll be chairing the housing subcommittee meeting, and thank you. And our next meeting will formally bring in Malcolm as both the vice chair and the minute taker. So thank you.
Can I make a statement, Lee?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, actually, I would like to back up and say what I would like to know. I would really like our mission defined.
Yep.
Because I am really, we just have so many hands doing kind of like the same thing. So I really want to know what our mission is
Yep.
in ours alone, as opposed to the, CPC, the housing, affordable housing. We have a subcommittee. We have the CDC. We have like 9,000 committees.
Yep.
You need to
That's
know.
a great point. So what I will lead off with, Garfield, and thank you for raising that. I'll read off the new description that we have for the housing subcommittee, which thanks to Pedro for bringing it up and Brandy pushing it forward. I'll read this to you and let me know if this sounds in lines with what we're thinking. The Select Board and Planning Board created a housing subcommittee, which is comprised of two Select Board members and 2 Planning Board members. This subcommittee will assess policies, programs, and suggest actions that allow for the implementation of a wide range of housing types to service our community. Importantly, the subcommittee focuses on areas where there is unmet need in housing types, vital for the economic health of the town. So I believe that Pedro had suggested having that slightly altered because it was focusing solely on affordable housing, and he was of the mindset that we should expand it so that we're just not focused on affordable housing. Because as you correctly mentioned, Garfield, we do have a affordable housing trust, and there are nonprofit organizations such as CDC and Construct focusing solely on affordable housing. So I believe this purview of the housing subcommittee is to actually expand on that and focus mostly on looking at the unmet needs of housing types in this community. So that would be looking at workforce housing, looking at ADUs, looking at more of a broad range of housing types, pretty much anything except the high-end luxury housing, which I would think that we would stay away from. Does that sound in lines with what this committee thinks, or any thoughts about that?
Thank you.
Yeah. So my thoughts, obviously affordable housing can be part of what we're looking at, but to have the ability to look at it in a more expansive scope so that, across the board, there is a housing crisis. So, and when we look at the area median income of our community, there's quite a range, anywhere from the affordable housing from, 30% and up to workforce housing, which is 80% AMI, to sometimes 100 up to 120%, 140%. So there's quite a range of housing types. So that was the description that was in there. Yes, Garfield.
I wonder, is it possible, or is it too much, but can we have all of these people in the same room for a meeting once? Like we have joint, we have joint planning board and select board, we have joint other meetings. Can we have a meeting with the CDC, the CBC, or all the initial folks, and we can have a meeting and we can all discuss our roles and really define them?
To kind of carve out our niche, or
Yeah,
in what way? Just to kind of say,
because there's, again, as I stated, we have all these facilities, or we're looking at all these places with all these different groups. I would love to hear what they had to say.
any thoughts, Jonathan?
Well, that's a pretty broad agenda
Yeah.
to take people's time. I think that they would be more disposed to doing something like that if it were focused on something that they're actually doing or that we want them to actually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know that the CDC has their mission, which is stated very clearly on their website, as this Construct, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, does. If there was a specific area that those organizations covered, that might be something that we could ask them to come in to speak to. But in terms of time management, we might want to be more focused before we do invite them. I think we just lost Garfield.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. But I think maybe down the road, if we had something like a summit, and this might be something for the town or an organization to organize, a housing summit that we brought all the stakeholders together. I don't know if we're the committee to put that on, but that might be helpful down the road. I'm going to see if I see Garfield trying to get back on.
Yeah, he was breaking up a little bit there when he was speaking. So
Was he? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
might have had a bad connection.
Okay. I'll definitely make a note of that though, and hopefully he'll come back on in a second.
And did we lose our quorum?
Uh,
I don't
Yeah.
know what the quorum is for 4 people.
we did. So let me just try to get back on. So we'll just give him a sec. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get hold of him. Malcolm,
Yes.
I just got a note that Steve says there's no need to be sworn in. Steve Bannon. Who told you that you needed to be sworn in?
I think it came from the clerk's office.
It is a subcommittee. You're already sworn in as a. planning
Yeah, I
board
know.
member.
That's why it was surprising to me.
Okay, well, Steve Bannon says positive, so we're putting into, there's litigation, we'll direct it towards him. But he says positive, so I think that's probably, I don't believe I was sworn in when I joined.
Yeah.
the
I don't recall being sworn in either. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jennifer Messina sent an email that I needed to be sworn in, but it was really a surprise to me because we had other subcommittees from the planning board that I wasn't sworn in for either.
I think she was thinking of it as a committee, not a subcommittee.
Okay,
Mhm. Okay,
so I am here.
okay, great. And so
And now
Steve's
the
positive
vice
that you're
chair.
sworn in, and that solves our quorum problem, but also Garfield's trying to get back on, so let me just see if I can get him. He says he's lost his internet.
So he could phone in if he still has.
Yeah, let me just see if I can send him this real quick. Okay, I just I texted Garfield the phone call in. But in terms of the quorum, so I think we're okay now.
The only thing I would say about the both the mission and the joint meeting is, part of the mission was looking at unmet housing needs. And I wonder if maybe the starting point would be to enumerate what those unmet housing needs are.
Yeah.
Prior to, meeting with other committees in terms of what their actions are in relation to those things. And I know a lot of that has been done, but I don't know that it's been really enumerated, if you will.
Yep. Yep. I think that's a great point to clarify that. So we have a nice, strong target moving forward. So while we're waiting for Garfield to call in, we can start, and this will feed into our priority planning as well, but just to kind of define this description, what are the unmet needs of this community? So Malcolm, if you want to think of anything and that comes to mind, or Jonathan.
Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think the starting point always has to be, workforce housing in terms of, housing for people who actually work in our town that can't afford to live here.
And everyone's clear what workforce housing is. We only have one guest here, but So generally that's 80% of the area median income up to 120. Sometimes it goes to 140, but generally 80% to 120. Okay, so we have that. Let me just hold on a sec. So in workforce housing, I mean, right now, if a landlord has reasonable rents, we can call that workforce housing. So do you see something that the town actually has an initiative that specifically focuses on people that have a salary range between that? So there would be kind of an income qualification element to this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have, I mean, I have some thoughts on solutions, but I don't know that we need to discuss, how to fix
Sure.
workforce housing at this point. I
Okay,
was kind of thinking we would come up with a list and say, okay,
Yeah.
well, for all these different, I think Garfield's suggestion is a good suggestion, that we
Yeah.
bring people together so that, and find out what people are doing, so we're not stepping on each other's toes all the time.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um,
Okay,
And maybe that's a good service that we can do as a committee, is to, so that, Peter knows what Paul is doing and so forth.
absolutely. Okay,
Um,
all right. And Garfield's back. Garfield, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't. Can you see me? I can't see me, but I can
well,
see
we
it.
can't say that-
Let's see. I can see if I can hide you.
Is he phoning in or is he?
Yeah,
know
he's
that-
phoning in. So yeah.
No, I'm back on.
Oh, you're back?
I'm back. Right.
You have to,
But
you
you
have to turn your
promote
video
me,
on.
David.
Oh, wait, I'm gonna promote you to panelist. One sec. Okay, you should be joining in as a panelist, so you should be able to.
Yeah.
turn on.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Welcome back.
Garfield, so two things. We found out that Malcolm can indeed participate, that he does not need to be sworn in. So we do have a quorum. Actually, let's backtrack now that we have Malcolm back. I'd like to officially nominate him, or let's go through the process of bringing him on as the vice chair. So do I have any calls to nominate Malcolm as vice chair?
So moved.
Motion.
Uh,
So, okay. And I
Yeah, I'll
second.
nominate. Second.
Roll call. Jonathan,
Aye.
Garfield,
Aye.
and I say aye. Welcome aboard, Malcolm.
I also.
Malcolm
say
doesn't
aye,
get to
by the
vote?
way.
Oh yeah, do you
Yeah.
want to vote for yourself?
No. Aye.
Great, it's unanimous. Okay, so we have vice chair and chair, and thank you, Malcolm, for offering to take the minutes. So Garfield, when you were offline, we started a list of, Malcolm brought up an excellent point of defining what are the unmet needs of this community. So we're going to start like a list and write down some of the housing needs that we feel that are unmet at the current time. So we started off with workforce housing, and we just wanted to clarify that everyone was on board with what the definition of workforce housing was.
I'll take it.
Yes.
Let's have it, please.
So, so when you're looking at area median income, generally for affordable housing, it ranges from 30% area median income up to 60% or 80% area median income. So when you're looking at affordable housing, that's generally the income qualification. Workforce housing is 80% area median income to 120 area median income. I have seen it go up to 140%. So those are the income levels that HUD has published. So generally, it's someone that anywhere from, they could be holding a part-time job or solely squarely in the middle income range. So they might be a little bit above the 100% area median income of Great Barrington, but not far ahead of that. So when we're looking at workforce housing, we're really talking about those that work in this community, that want to live in this community, whether it's anywhere from the service industry to nurses to police officers. So there's quite a range, but it's people that actually are working to make a living So we see that as a gap right now.
I'd like to know if we can get some numbers perhaps, or at least even a vague view of what the workforce housing need actually is, or who these people are. Because when I think of workforce housing, I'm getting the feeling that we're talking about teachers, nurses, etc. But not to be left out, unfortunately, but when we talk about people who can't afford to work here, I was at Taft Farm not too long ago. They have 20 employees, he said, 2 of them live in Great Barrington. So that is people that are working. So they need to be included, but those people that are working in service industries like Taft, etc., aren't making the money that teachers and police officers and etc. are making, nurses are making. So I don't want them to be left behind, even though we're trying to say workforce, affordable housing, but these people are working people and they need a place as well.
Yep.
And that's what the Windflower, I don't know if we can bring that up or we should not be speaking of that now, but there was some talk of Windflower and putting workforce housing in it.
Yeah, well, I have a conflict with that, being the development director of Construct and having a hand in on the Windflower. So, but what I will say is with workforce, the terminology of workforce that has quite a range. And even when you're talking about affordable housing, so the tenants that we work with, for instance, in Construct, although they might income qualify as affordable housing tenants, their range is quite large. So we do have teachers, we have yoga instructors, we have chefs. So, with that range of 30% area median income to 80% or so, it covers quite a range, and it covers from full-time to part-time tenants that are working with Department of Mental Health that have a disability. So there's quite a range of folks that we serve. And then when you get into the workforce housing, you are kind of inching up quite a notch. And then that's when you start bringing in, the police officers and the nurses. And so that's where the income qualification comes in. You look at the salary and each year HUD will come out with what the area median income is. So we're slightly, although we're in Berkshire County, Pittsfield has a slight adjustment for their area median income. And in the housing needs assessment that was published, I believe in 2019 in Great Barrington, there's actually a list of that. We can see where that landed us in terms of, who that includes. And I'll be happy to bring the latest HUD numbers so we can actually see the salary ranges for Great Barrington. Right.
Go ahead and then I'll.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if we should break it up then into terms of workforce market rate housing as opposed to workforce subsidized or affordable housing.
Yeah.
And I wonder also if we should have like subcategories of rental versus home ownership, certainly in the market rate housing. And Garfield, I mean, you were when you were out, I expressed I think your suggestion of getting everybody together is a great idea, but I suggested also that perhaps we should come up with a list of exactly what do we think the unmet needs might be that we can explore. And then that would give, a list or a topic to focus discussion with these various groups. How are you meeting rental needs, or what do you see as far as rental needs for workforce housing? What do you see as far as home ownership demand or needs in terms of workforce housing and so forth? When we talk to different groups that are trying to meet these needs.
And Garfield, to answer your, you brought up the topic of Windflower Inn and Construct's work, really movement towards workforce housing. So, again, speaking as a development director of Construct, our mission is affordable housing, but because we have seen that there's an unmet need in the community to build more workforce housing, to create more workforce housing, that is what was the catalyst in terms of Construct moving into potentially workforce housing and purchasing the wind power. So that's a good example of, organization pivoting to meet this unmet need. And obviously Construct is not the only one doing that. The town will be doing the other organizations, but workforce housing really is something that is affecting economic development across the board. And if we don't really get a handle on that, we're going to be losing businesses. We're going to be losing people that come to visit us, that no longer feel that, there's enough for them to come to, such as restaurants or cultural activities. So there really is a snowball effect.
Well, a couple of things. One is one is when you say people may not come here because of the restaurants, etc. Those people are again categorized. I think they would not be workforce people that are, or making the restaurant short-staffed, if you will. They're not workforce people. Those are affordable housing folks. My other suggestion, and I can be way off, tell me you're crazy or whatever, but is it possible to say, look at CDC, CBC, whatever is going to handle this section. You guys will handle this section. We all, because I heard Malcolm say we don't want to step on each other's toes all the time, and probably is what's happening. Is there a way to define who actually does what? I know you said that, I know we've touched on it, but we're still talking for people doing the same thing. Correct? Or am I incorrect? I can be incorrect. I don't mind. I'm just,
Jonathan or Malcolm, I have something to say, but anyone else want to chime in?
Well, I think those organizations work together all the time. And I don't think, I think their charges overlap.
right.
So, I'm not sure where you're going with this.
Well, I guess to keep the overlapping from happening or stepping on each other's toes. I guess that's where I was trying to go with it, in defining who's doing what, so we know. Let's say we're going to only do workforce housing. And then of course the affordable housing is only going to do workforce, going to do affordable housing. Construct will do the same. I don't know. That's just my thought. It just seems like, again, well, I know Johnson said they do overlap, and that's true, but that was my thought. Everything overlaps.
Yeah. I think, with the nonprofits, they have their missions, and in a way they overlap, but also they also have created their own niche. So CDC is working generally on larger projects. The Construct tends to work in a smaller scale, up until maybe 15 units, the smaller congregant housing. But I think from the town perspective, we're in a unique position because, we can find those unmet needs, and we can say, okay, well, this is the need that we should tackle, or these are the needs. So I think it's always good to be informed by what the other nonprofits are doing. And like you said, Garfield, maybe meet with them and have them come to us and saying, hey, we have this sorted out, but we really need the town's leadership on this particular issue. So I think there's room in both. So we have workforce housing market rate. So when we talk about market rate housing, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about luxury condos? Are we talking about, the highest and the best price you can get? I mean, Jonathan, from a real estate point of view, when you think of market rate, what are you thinking?
I don't think there is any market rate. It's crazy out there. And with what things are going for, there's no way that if you were buying a rental property, but given what you have to pay for it now, there's no way you could keep the rents affordable.
But isn't that what our unmet need is?
That's one of many.
Yeah, okay, but that's one. Okay, so we need market rate housing for those people who make 80 to 120% of median income. That's an unmet need. Whether we can meet it or not is another matter altogether. But
well, that's workforce housing.
Yeah, I think that's different. I think I see that as two different categories: workforce and market rate.
Well, but
correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan. I always saw market rate as kind of the highest going for the shooting for the stars in terms of what you can get for the,
Yeah, I think that's true.
okay.
But that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Mm, mhm.
I mean,
So,
to me,
so when you get
affordable
in-
housing is essentially subsidized housing in the sense that the rents are lower because in some way or another, the housing's either at the building part or on the rent subsidy part, then something's getting subsidized. If it's not being subsidized, it's market rate, and we don't have market rate housing that's affordable.
Well, and what do you think this committee can do to make that happen?
I have no idea, Jonathan, but when we talk about some of the things we've talked about in the planning board in terms of perhaps incentivizing people to provide affordable rents, that doesn't mean, does that make it not market rate? I guess it does. But our problem is an economy that the idea of market rate housing is no longer affordable for people who actually work for a living.
Mhm.
And,
Right. Well, that's true all over the country.
yeah, of course it is. Of course
Yeah.
it is. But we have a problem here.
There are developers that are offering workforce housing. They could step into the market rate housing. They could, definitely achieve higher rents, and they choose not to for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And then there's developers that want the highest rent that they can get. So, I really see those as two categories. And, what can we do to incentivize those developers that always, that will go for the market rate, that will go for the highest rent possible? How do we incentivize them to bring it down to at least a workforce housing rate that people can live and work here? So I definitely see incentivizing as one option. And what I hope to do is, I found it really helpful when Pedro brought in Josh Irwin, and, to have guests such as a developer. Maybe we bring in a Richard Stanley or Craig Barnum or, another developer owner that can really talk about, or Ian Rash, what would it take to incentivize developers to offer rental rates that work in this community in terms of supporting our workforce. So that's something I'd like to work on, and we'll seek out to bringing to this committee. So right now,
Tax rates are always popular, and what people like. I had a gentleman who lives across the street from me who's not really affordable housing friendly. We were speaking, and he said, well, if you want me to help out, give me a tax break.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's within the purview of the town. I mean, we have the ability to look at some of the options we can offer, such as tax rates, incentives, density bonuses, TIFs. We have quite an array of things that are at our disposal that we could bring to the table and speak about. So absolutely. I have a hand raised. Let me just get Eileen. Eileen, I'm going to let you talk for a sec. Actually, I think you can.
She's muted right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're there now, Eileen. Yes.
I'm unmuted. I just wanted to say that isn't that on the planning board agenda for Thursday night? Various ways to incentivize.
Thank you, Eileen. So for Malcolm and Jonathan, I do see, thank you, Eileen, that there is crossover that on the agenda for the planning board, that's something you're tackling, and we don't want to duplicate efforts on the planning board. So can you, maybe the two of you, explain a little bit of where the planning board is going with things like that on the agenda?
Jonathan, you want to run with that?
Go for it, Malcolm.
Well, there are things. For example, the planning board doesn't have any financial say in incenting. So our discussion on Thursday night is more about, things we could bring back to this committee.
Okay.
Really, that's where I think we would go with it, is, following a discussion on Thursday, which would be, in the planning board, I would expect to bring that back to this committee, which then can say, maybe this belongs in the lap of the select board, or maybe this belongs in the lap of the Affordable Housing Trust or some other group. But we're looking at things outside of zoning bylaws per se, because zoning bylaws don't really, I mean, they open the door, but they don't really there's no compulsion for anybody to build anything that we
Yeah.
allow. So the question is next, if we allow higher density, if we allow more affordable accessory dwelling units or multifamily housing, what's the other side of it that can help make that happen?
Mhm.
So that's I think that's, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's really where our discussion was going.
Well, part of what we're talking about is there's an interesting guy out of, I don't know, somewhere in the Springfield area, I guess, who is doing panelized ADUs on small houses. And what he's doing is he's going all over the Northeast, really. He's going to Maine, he's going to New Hampshire, and in each town that allows these things, he's basically having a public session to educate people about what are the hurdles about getting an ADU in your backyard, for instance. What are the costs? What do you have to do? And I'm trying to bring him to Great Barrington, because I think a lot of what is, I mean, obviously there's the cost of materials, the cost of labor, everything is difficult right now, but it'd be good to try to encourage people through educating them about alternatives to the housing.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a good point, Jonathan, because the initiatives for creating ADUs and, the planning board's leadership on that, really provide a way that eases that creation. But, there have been obstacles. So, why is it hard to get financing for an ADU? And such a, and some of the other points that Jonathan just brought up. So, why aren't more ADUs being created? So I think that's a really, really good point, and to kind of dive into that. And what can we do as a town? Is it working with banks? Is it, creating more incentives to bring that initiative to the forefront? So there's also junior ADUs, which I've heard about. And, that's something that I'd like to speak to. So I'll put down ADUs and junior ADUs as well on our list to dive into.
Could you explain? I've never heard that term.
Yeah.
Junior
So what I've seen about junior ADUs is it's actually part of the main house. It's part of the primary house. And what it does is it's basically a building extension, and you share. So it's having, let's say at your basement, you share a common either kitchen or a common bathroom. So what I've heard is that banks, if you create an extension, and so it's basically like a granny flat. So off your main house, connected to your house, you build a room, and you might be sharing a bathroom or a kitchen with the primary house. And so I think what I've heard is that there's less risk for banks because it's attached to your home. It's not a standalone entity. So I would like to get more information about that. But from what I have read is it's connected to the house, it's sharing, either a common kitchen or a bathroom, and it's easier to finance or to get financing for. So.
But that would not.
So you wouldn't have to get the infrastructure, you wouldn't have to get the septic, you wouldn't, so but it's something to explore.
Septic you do have to, because if you're adding a bedroom. Also, that would not qualify as a dwelling. That would qualify as boarding.
Well, it would be a unit, so it would be creating a unit of housing. So you would, you could rent that out to a long-term tenant. So it's all creating, it'd be similar to, let's say, a tiny home. It's creating a unit of housing that there's an ability to live. So it would have a bathroom, it would have a place to eat. So, when we're talking about creating units of housing, we look at the tiny homes. So, I mean, that's not ideal. A lot of that is transitional housing. It's a stepping stone to something else. So you might start out in a tiny home, you might start out in an ADU, and then eventually you'll move into something else. But, it's really steps of housing. And, what's the obstacles that stand in people's way to get on that property ladder, whether it's rental or home ownership. So, I mean, right now, whether we like it or not, there's a homelessness problem in Great Barrington. We don't see it. Working in a construct, I see it every day. We're getting requests for tents from people. No longer are we saying, we're getting requests to put us in a shelter in North Adams. We're getting requests for tents. So, we're aware where people are living in their cars. We're aware of the parking lots that are safe. We're aware of the encampments. We're aware of where people are able to shower. Berkshire South has been very, very generous. We work with specific lodging facilities that will take some of the people that really need emergency housing. So there is a homelessness issue in Great Barrington. And, what we want to do is get a roof over these people's heads. We don't want them to spend a night in a tent during the winter. So when we talk about units of housing, this is an option. An ADU is an option. A granny flat or a junior ADU might be an option. Tiny home might be an option.
Well, some of what you're describing, Lee, sounds like boarding houses.
Yep.
Which have kind of disappeared over the last since World War II, I guess. But maybe that's where the need is for something less than like you said, something less than an ADU. It doesn't. Boarding houses tend to be bedroom and bathroom and shared kitchen or serving meals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the movements towards purchasing inns, and I won't talk specifically about what Garfield had mentioned at the beginning of the hour, but there is a movement into purchasing unused motels and hotels, and that would be studio apartments. We could make them into units of housing for people, to get them housed, to get to get a roof over their head, and then looking at congregate housing. So you have these multifamilies, you have these giant, the old Berkshire cottages. And, if they come on stream in terms of, for tax reasons or whatever, that might be congregate housing that could be used, for workforce housing. So, you would have a shared common room, you'd have a shared kitchen. Generally, they would have their own bathrooms, but it would be, in a sense, a congregate house. And you could group it, by the workforce, whether it's nurses or people that work in the service industry. So that is another option. And so I've been looking into, state funds to help purchase things like that. When there's a disused motel, could that be an option to create, studio apartments, for instance? So
I've had my hand up for a while.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to speak.
Thank you.
Recognize me. Why am I
Thank you.
bothered to put my hand up? A couple things. One, I think what Josh is talking about almost sounds like boarding housing, because that's the way Windflower is set up. The other thing that I've noticed, I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but there's tons of colleges. I can't say tons. I've read several times out west, there are colleges that are building ADUs. Cost of materials is going to be high, just the same, but you won't have to pay prevailing wage. You won't have to probably, these are probably done as projects, if you will. But I've read it more than once that there are colleges out there that are building ADUs. I don't see why we can't put out some type of feeler to different places that will build ADUs for people, and they're going to be cheaper than hiring your usual contractor to build the houses. I've seen it, I've read it, I know it's out there. I don't have the access to the places. This was a year or two ago. I honestly don't remember, but it's definitely something that is going on. There's articles about it that we've seen, that we've been asked to read, that show that some places colleges are building homes. They're building ADUs. I don't see why we can't put out feelers to find out if we can do that.
Are you suggesting that Simon's Rock might build ADUs?
No, I'm not suggesting them, but if they have the capability, why not? These were universities like, University of California, Portland, those kind of places. They weren't community, they weren't pre-college. They were.
No, but they're not going to build it here.
Well, why not? We get to places that are around here if we have them.
It's a long commute to UCLA from here.
I couldn't hear you.
It's a long commute to UCLA from here.
Well, Jonathan, maybe have we tapped our area? Do we have any idea? I don't. Do you? Does Lee? Does anyone know if that's going on in this area? We haven't looked. We don't know until we look.
Yeah.
We can ask. We don't only say it's not happening.
I know that Simon's Rock built 2 houses as faculty housing about, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, and they just sold them. And I also know that they had pre-approval for a new dorm, and they just got an extension for the 3rd time because their student count was cut in half by the pandemic.
Mhm.
I bet we can go online and say, is anyone building ADUs or their colleges? And you know how the internet, you can find damn near any. I've been willing to take a look.
Well, Garfield, I know there's a lady that moved here from California, Amy Turnbull, and she is part of that tiny homes housing movement out west. And she's just moved to Dalton recently, so she's on my list to invite her in. So that's one option. We could bring her in and ask some questions such as this and find out what are the obstacles. The other point I'd like to make is we have Pathways to the Trades, which is an initiative that it's kind of a partnership between the schools, Construct, Green Agers, Railroad Street Youth Project. So what this is really bringing the trades into schools and using some of the students from those schools to build. I know, for instance, they worked on Construct's new Center for Affordable Housing. So they did some of the demolition. So we do have these students that are being trained through the school system and that have then moved on to construction. So that might be one option maybe to look into.
Well, Habitat does that.
And Habitat, yeah, obviously they have their own project. So they're working on the Grove Street in Alden.
But presumably they're also training.
Yeah.
Because they're working with volunteers, so presumably kids are helping out and learning skills.
Absolutely. Malcolm?
Yeah, I'm curious on Garfield, what Garfield was saying about the ADUs though. Garfield, do you know what they're doing with these things? I mean, are they like building ADUs to
They're building them for people. They're building them for people.
Okay.
I mean, they're not building big units.
Well,
I wish I could find the article again, but
because if they're ADUs, they have to be accessory to something. So presumably they're helping people build accessory units on their homes then, or on their properties. Is that what they're?
Boy, I don't remember all the details. I just remember it and reading it and seeing that they were doing it out west. But I don't remember all the details.
That would be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, one of the obstacles I can see with, I would love to have a second source of income. So, if there was kind of a how-to kit and said, okay, well, you want to build this unit of housing, this is what it's going to cost, these are steps, you're going to get financing at this level. I think the unknown is what really is putting some people off is really, what will it take to do this? What are the hurdles? What's the permitting? So anything we can do from a town perspective to ease people into that would be helpful.
I think that's where Jonathan was going with the folks we would bring in from Springfield who are experts in this area that could help maybe do seminars for people in our town to
Mhm.
say, okay, here's how you do this stuff.
Yeah, well, the great thing is we have Caroline Valley from the Habitat. We can segue. I just have one comment from Jim Garzone. Jim, I'm gonna promote you just so you can speak. Let's just get you. Okay, Jim, you can talk if you're there. Jim? Hey, Jim.
Hi, sorry, I muted myself. One question I have, 84 North Plain Road, is there a consolidated list or something that should the town have of all the coming projects that are in the pipeline, what those projects are, how many units are coming on board, if they're affordable, if they're workforce, so we can have a plan of what's going to be developed and then what gaps we have. So let's say we need 100 workforce, there's 20 workforce housing units coming, so we have a gap of 80. Something that the committee and the subcommittee and the other committees can just look at and say, okay, this is where we need to kind of look to see where we can fill that gap. That's my only suggestion.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Jim. Okay, before I bring Caroline Valley in from Habitat for Humanity, does anyone else, we can obviously continue. There's a lot of discussion. I think we have a good list. We started out with workforce housing. We moved into market rate housing. There are some discussions about ADUs, junior ADUs, tiny homes. I'd mentioned maybe looking into motels, congregant housing, multifamilies. So this is all about the unmet needs in the community. Is there anything that we have that I've missed? And
Yeah,
it will obviously be continued.
I think that we get a lot of pushback, obviously, on affordable housing. And one of the principal reasons for that is that because of the funding mechanism, we're effectively creating ghettos because they don't do market rate. They won't finance market rate in those developments. And so I really think that we need to focus on how do we integrate people of mixed incomes into neighborhoods, whether that's taking like the Grove Street house or something like that. Basically, I would love to see someone be doing interventions in neighborhoods, one at a time, not 45 units at a time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And creating community, not ghettos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And Jonathan, I have my eyes on multifamilies and what we can do to really prevent multifamilies turning into single family homes. I think, having multifamilies in neighborhoods is really important and keeping that affordable rather than possibly turning into a single family or a second home or Airbnb, because when you have that integration, I think that's very, very valuable to a community and to a neighborhood. So I think that's an excellent point, Jonathan. Anyone else?
Take a little exception with the use of ghetto. It's a German word, and I don't think we have ghettos in Great Barrington. I don't think we're building ghettos in Great Barrington. I think those houses are not. They have a connotation. I don't need to verbalize or vocalize what the connotation, but I take exception to the word ghetto because of the connotation it has, and I don't believe our town has a ghetto or is building ghettos.
And I agree with that. I mean, I think that the word affordable housing often is equated by people as poverty housing, but it's not. Yeah. We're talking about people who earn, you're saying 80 to 120% of the median income can't afford market rate housing. So that means that the housing has to be affordable, maybe with a small a, not a capital A. But that still means it needs to be somehow or another subsidized because the market rate housing is not going to meet the need. So, and I don't think we should use inflammatory terms for housing, because we're going to have to house hundreds of people. So I agree with Garfield on that.
Yeah. Garfield, thank you for pointing that out. And, I think Jonathan has an excellent point about we really want to have that mixed income element, any kind of housing that we create, subsidized or unsubsidized. it's really the diversity we want to champion. Okay, so if everyone's okay, I'm going to move into our next agenda item, and we'll come back to this, and I have some notes, and I'll bring that back into the next meeting. Before we get to Caroline, do you want to just look about in terms of setting meetings? Because Caroline will probably go into closing into our meeting because we want to have a 2:15 stop if we can. Does this work for everyone to have a Tuesday 1 o'clock meeting so we can kind of set this and have a monthly meeting at Tuesday at 1? Does this work for Jonathan Garfield?
It's not my favorite day, but I
No.
can make it work if that's the only date that other people are available.
We just, we ran into kind of planning board and all the various other meetings at night and golfing.
Well, right now I'm looking for another job, and this might not
Okay.
work for me if I have another job. It works now because I have the time off from the job I'm currently at. But I don't know if this would be a good time for me always. I probably prefer it in the evening.
Between the planning board and select board, and I think Malcolm, you said you had another committee you were on, or many.
Yeah.
Sorry,
BRPC.
which one?
BRPC.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on DRPC. I'm on our historical commission, and then I'm an officer at the club. That's my job, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, it seems the afternoon, might be good. And what we could do is I can pencil in September 6th at 1 p.m. State primaries I have on that day. And then if, Garfield, if your circumstances change and you can't make Tuesday in a month on September 6th at 1, we can certainly adjust that.
Yeah.
But is everyone okay with penciling in a month's time, September 6th at 1 p.m.?
Yeah, we can start there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, super. All right, so I'm going to thank you and move on to with the recommendation and suggestion by Jonathan. So thank you for your suggestion to talk about the North Plain Road housing development, which is the Alden Street or Alden property that was known, and Habitat for Humanity's work on this project. They are going to be having a community outreach session, and I'm sure Caroline will fill us in on that. So Caroline, welcome to our housing subcommittee meeting. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. So yep, our meeting is in just 2 days. It's in the evening, starting at 5:30, and it's at Benchmark Realtors, right in.
No, it's at Housatonic Real Estate.
Sorry, Housatonic Real Estate. Thank you, Jonathan. When I don't make the poster, it doesn't always stick. But yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We've talked to a lot of neighbors, folks that were going to be on vacation. We sent them plans in advance, and they were able to give us some ideas or thoughts that they had. But this will be just one of many. We'll also be going to the town relatively soon. I think Brent White is going to be getting on the dockets to get feedback from the town. And then we'll, continue this right on along, because there is always opportunities to change house design and all kinds of things. And also trying to get an idea of who is going to be applying for these houses based on what we see is shifting in the whole county. I did see that you guys had questions about a variety of different things. The biggest thing that we're waiting for right now is to hear what the results of the MassWorks grant is that will cover the infrastructure. So that is the biggest and key component that we have to have to move the project forward. But we are continuing on with all the planning, community meetings, and then redesign. Like I was talking to a few people, and they're thinking that we don't need as many 4-bedroom units as we had originally anticipated. I just read through the housing needs assessment and agree with that. So we're probably going to scaling that back on the number of bedroom sizes. So we'll have more as we get more information from the neighborhood. We have a variety of funding sources. We had set up a fund a little over 2 years ago to start collecting down pay, like our money to be able to build the project. We're actually in negotiations of hiring on someone that will help us with an additional capital campaign. I know I've talked to Chris about the opportunity for us to get some ARPA funding for that project. And I would assume that many of the homeowners will be asking for the Great Barrington Down Payment Assistance Fund. That's one of the other things that we have. But because of the way that we sell off our houses, we're not like rentals where they have to have the whole project funded and whatnot. We sell each house as it goes, so that money goes into the next series of houses. And then we also, as many of you know, get sponsorships from a variety of different companies, but we get people that will come and work with us from the trades, and we get reduced prices from the trades and whatnot. And that helps, make the funding gap a little bit less. Right now, we have the same concern that everybody does about the rising interest rates and what kind of pressures that is going to put on homeowners, because we had a price point for the, we're looking at a 50 to 100% AMI for income guidelines based on family size. And I was pretty comfortable with that. But every time I see the interest rates going up another percentage or two, that means that number is much smaller. So I'm hoping that there's a reversal on the part of the Boston Fed that, or the Federal Reserve Bank, that it'll go down as we get closer to construction time. Because Habitat does have funding partners that give a reduced rate to Habitat homeowners. And they do that because we have such a long-term commitment with our homeowners. We work with them on financial education, coaching, helping them build, they're building their own house while they're doing it, so that they know the care that it goes into maintaining that house, I think, to what Jonathan's point is. And we work on helping them create, a replenishment fund for themselves, so that when something needs to be fixed, they have the funding there available to do it. So those are some of the reasons that our lenders give a reduced amount of interest on the loans, because we've got a proven model that we have very low foreclosures. People are really coming into it financially prepared to be able to be good homeowners and also to be good contributors to the community. And right now there's 19 units planned, but I think I'm going to be able to get another one back in. And I think I answered the question about the income qualification. And then the biggest thing that I would like to talk to you about is there a local preference? So in order to be part of the Habitat program, you have had to live and work in Berkshire County for a minimum of 1 year, but a preference of 2 years. And because of that, we do not prefer to put in a local preference. And I'll share some feedback that I've gotten recently on a number of other affordable housing opportunities, that when they have a local preference, whether it is the intention of the town or not, when you say there is a local preference, how it is seen by somebody who does not live in the town is that you are not welcoming to me. And we do not want to do anything that creates a situation that people would not feel that they would be welcome in Great Barrington, because the people I've met in Great Barrington are incredibly welcoming and really, really lovely and helpful. And I just love you guys so much. So I would not want us to put anything out there that put that thought process in a person's mind, and you limit your pool of candidates. And I don't think we want to do that either. We want to have really good families that are moving into these homes that are going to benefit the community. And we want them to know that they are welcoming and ready to be, part of community. So that would be how I would answer that question.
Thank you, Carolyn. Garfield.
Yes. Again, I'll give my preference. Hi, Carolyn. Thank you.
Happy to see you.
Use well. I don't know. I'm kind of like a local guy. I would love to see it lean local as opposed to, because, and I tell you, and I'm just thinking, I can imagine the folks in Hoosier Town they weren't all excited about it in the beginning, and we had to kind of really work with them and kowtow to them, which is fine because they need to have their input noticed and heard. but I can see a lot of yelling and screaming. And truthfully, myself, I like to see the people in our town taken care of first. That's my opinion. It doesn't mean other than that. It's my opinion.
Thank you, Garfield. And when you consider 20 units and everybody is going to have an equal opportunity to apply for those right from the beginning, because we don't wait to the end, right? Habitat starts in the beginning because you have to have time to get through your education process and everything else. The chances that local, I mean, I just got off the phone with somebody that their mother knew about this project and called and said, hey, can I talk about this? And they're from Great Barrington. So and the people that have approached us for Grove Street are from Great Barrington. So the chances of at least half the units not going to Great Barrington people, I think the odds are pretty slim.
Thank you. Malcolm.
I mean, the only thing I would point out to Garfield is, that, you know, one of our problems is we don't have enough housing for the people who work here.
Mhm.
So part of the thing is to actually create housing so that the people who don't live here but work here could live here. So, you know, if we just restrict it to people who already live in Great Barrington, then we're not solving that part of the problem.
Well, I actually said I wouldn't want to restrict it. I did say I would like to see them first.
Yeah, I'd like to encourage people who live in Great Barrington to look at this, but yeah.
And we would love to partner with all of you to get that word out to all of your social circles and all of the people that you know. You know, my hope is I have a son that I hope someday will propose to this lovely girl, and one is getting ready to work in Great Barrington, and he's looked at places to buy, and it's not even a possibility. And they're paying $1,300 in Pittsfield at a very not great place. And but it was greater than the last place they were at, so that's a bump up. But they have to pay a very big portion of their earnings to be able to do that. So I get when people want to be able to know that their kids could live here and work here and stay in the community that we all want them to. So we understand the heart of it. And I think that we can still get there without even putting a local preference on it.
Okay. When they start yelling, don't mention me.
Jonathan, did you have any notes, comments?
Well, I'd love to talk about what's actually proposed.
Okay. Sure, Carolyn, do you want to go into, you mean the specifics in terms of the housing types, Jonathan, or the way that it's situated in the land, or?
The site plan is all I've seen.
Okay. Carolyn, do you want to just give us a kind of an overview of what the site plan might look like?
Sure. So I hope everybody got the site plan. I thought Erin might have sent that out. But basically what we heard in all of our conversations in Housatonic that we had, Garfield, I know you read a lot of them, but even in the copies is, and then talking to the people that we frequently build with, is they were really hoping to have like a neighborhood feel of it and have a common green where their houses are facing forward. So there isn't a barrier, you know, like sometimes we get into the situation where we don't even get to see our neighbors, but we want to make sure there's porches and there's a greenway where kids can play on the green, and there'll be a common gazebo and they can gather there and really build community. We also heard very strongly that the abutters would very much like to have a big buffer zone. So we have built that into the thinking to make sure that there's enough space behind any one of the houses that if you didn't want to see your neighbor, you would not have to see your neighbor if you were an abutter. We got feedback from one of the closest abutters to 3 of the houses, and they said, you know what, the greenery is fine, but we'd really like to see a privacy fence. So we're going to add that into the plan, that there would be a privacy fence on any ones that are super, super close to an abutter. So we do take the things that we hear into consideration, and the engineer, Brent White Engineering, I keep sending him emails saying, hey, here's some more things we've heard. Start thinking about how you'd incorporate that and what can we do next. One of the things that I would like to see in the plan that we haven't been able to figure out, because we're working very hard to make sure we stay in the already approved PERD guidelines, So you'll see on each one of the plans, there's what the PERD requirements are, because that's the easiest path to approval and to getting the houses built. So he looked at all of those requirements and really tried to work on making sure that that will meet all of that. Also where the stormwater drain, and even to the point of building in whole house filtration systems in every one of the houses. We're not going to solve the other the water problem in Housatonic, but we want to mitigate it as much as we can. Because I will tell you, we've had a lot of conversations with neighbors and such, and the biggest thing is not about our development. The biggest thing is the concern about the water. And they're saying, are people going to want to live here when our water is what our water is? And that's a concern I have too. And I'm hoping that we're about to bring somebody new to the staff as the construction director, and he has a lot of expertise on water systems. So I'm hoping that he can bring some new ideas to our thinking about how might we solve this problem, because I know it's an expensive problem. So.
Thank you. Carolyn, I had one question. Do you have any wiggle room on the AMI, the 50% to 100% AMI? Can you go a little higher if need be, or?
We might be able to go a tad higher. And I've already started making a case for it. Habitat International does not really like you to go above 100% AMI, but I've already started I've been laying out what this project initially was envisioning, because we had hoped at one point that we were going to be able to do 40, but there's no way 40 is going to work. So now I feel like in order to make the whole project viable, I have to be able to look at would 110 work. And we know right now 2 units we're going to be at 100% AMI, but those numbers are pretty fluid right now, and they will be until we have the final permitting, and then we have to go to Department of Housing and Community Development for them to approve our AMI for each unit.
Thank you. Could you give us a sense of the timeline for the MassWorks grant approval? Or
it was applied for June 3rd. The last I heard is that if we're lucky, we may hear by the late fall. Having gone through this MassWorks cycle with the city of Pittsfield, we had to apply that year in July. They accepted the proposal in August. They told us that we would hear, I think at that time they were telling us we were going to hear in October, November. We finally had the Lieutenant Governor came to present us with the yay, you got it. And that was in February. And then we were already prepared to go out because you work with the town to put up the RFPs, because you do have to go out for an RFP process. And so we were already, as soon as we knew we had it ready to go, and that will be our plan, working with Chris as well, so that we are making sure we meet all the procurement rules and all of that. And we've already started, because we do a lot of other construction, we've already started to talk to some of our foundation people and whatnot, saying, hey, be on the lookout. Here's the plan. Start thinking about what would your bid be. And then we'll, because there's not a lot of people that do all of the work that needs to be done on that project. And then with any luck, if we are able to break ground with the infrastructure, my intention is to get at least the first 3 foundations in at the same time the infrastructure is going in, because you're going to have the big trucks at the same time. So we won't have to have the big trucks going on the new roadway and whatnot. So that with any luck, we would be able to have our first groundbreaking of a house in July. And it'd be too optimistic, I think, for June of 23.
so you have pre-approval for the MassWorks grant. It's just a matter of the announcement. Is that?
No, that was when we worked with the city of Pittsfield. So
okay.
Even when you got the notification, or the sort of soft notification, they told you can't tell anybody, you can't start doing anything until the governor comes and makes their political announcement.
Yeah, I remember that through Eagle Mill. So so we're thinking a fall announcement either way. And if for some reason you don't get through this round, what's the chance that you'll get past this round? Or?
We've been told that we have a really good chance of being approved. I mean, now is the right time, because there's so much money that's going into housing right now. And, there is a shift to recognizing home ownership as a wealth generation opportunity in addition to all of the other benefits. So, I feel optimistic. Everybody I've talked to feels optimistic, but I never like to do anything until I get the word saying I have the money to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions from the committee? Because we're just a bit over our time. So Carla, so it's the committee outreach meeting again is at the Housatonic Realty on what day and what time, please?
It's Thursday, 5:30. It's this Thursday at 5:30.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks. And we're happy. Aaron would be happy to give you like updates as things progress, if that's helpful to you.
That is, yeah. So anytime you have an update, just contact me and I'll get you on the agenda.
Okay,
I
great.
just have one thing, Carol, can you tell me where and what that is again? It's Thursdays at 5:30. Where is it?
5:30 at Housatonic Real Estate.
Housatonic Real Estate.
Yeah. I have a feeling we may be an overflow crowd, so people could bring their lawn chairs and we could sit outside if it's as hot as it is today.
Okay.
Okay.
Which hopefully it won't be.
No.
I know, I'm starting to wilt, people.
All right. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Bye.
And thank you for, I only caught a little bit of what you were saying when I first got on. And I just want to let you know that we have a housing strategy group throughout Berkshire County that's looking at, it's called an MEI initiative, where we're going to be able to talk more with towns and smaller towns and really talk about what can we do together to solve this problem. So it's not any individual town carrying the load. It's all of us brainstorming together to see what we can do to make a better future for our Berkshire residents.
Super. So maybe we'll bring you on separately just to talk about that initiative. That would be
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Okay, so we're just going to wrap up. Any comments before we wrap up this meeting? Okay, so I take let's say media time. Anyone from the media? We have Eileen and Shaw. I meant to say, anyone from the committee want to have any announcements or closing remarks?
Nothing.
No. Jonathan? No. Okay, so I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. See, I
Okay.
made my first motion.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And I'll be in touch. And thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.